This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.
A friend of mine and someone that I've gotten to know very well, who's one of the biggest brains I know, and sometimes you can't even keep up. You're like, dude, you got to slow it down a little bit, and his French accent doesn't help much, but he's a real good guy, and he's brought on some friends as we do these segments called Frank's Friends. And Frank Dumas joins us, and let's let him do the honors who he's bringing on today. Hi, Frank.
Hello, Todd.
Nice to talk to you, my man.
Today?
I'm good, thank you. And you?
Well, I'm pretty good. We're lucky tonight. We're able to, it's a little bit past midnight here, and I was able to gather two persons with me that are still son of mine after this long week of convention. I have Halima that you're going to like a lot. She's involved. She's actually a Canadian, and she's been involved with different social issues and social cause. Starting to get a lot of traction for a project, mostly out. And funny enough, she's getting probably, and that's my perception, more traction outside of Canada than she's doing in Canada. People are really giving her a lot of attention outside the country. She was here for the AI and cannabis convention that kind of overlapped with the AI and blockchain convention. And she's been working on medical cannabis and research, and she's pretty much told me today that she's also starting to look into the mushroom for the same reason. So I know that you're going to find some common interest there. And I brought Owen on, who's kind of doing what you're doing, but specialized more in technology, fundamental research, and blockchain. And he's he just flew out and back to Switzerland, but took the time to call back in. And I've seen Owen in different, in a lot of these shows over the last 2 years, I would say. And he can give you a general feel of how these things are going. But we're seeing the industry being cleaned up. I think that's if you ask me, my impression of this show now. In 6 months, we saw a lot of the deadwoods of the old ICO, or the initial coin offering. A lot of the bad projects are out of business now. And we're starting to see people that actually are deploying or about to deploy an interesting application that will change people's life. Last quick note, I was also with Halima meeting Akon, singer, earlier today. Akon has some very interesting initiative for Africa and to uplift African country out of poverty using new technology and using blockchain. That's probably something that people would definitely find interesting to look into.
Yeah, without a doubt, Frank Dumas, who's talking about being at the conference in Malta, blockchain and AI conference, and as well there's cannabis stuff going on. So why don't we start with Halima, and I just want to make sure I'm saying your last name right. Is it Al-Hatimy?
Correct.
Thank you so much for being here on the program. We appreciate Frank for organizing this. You're the president and founder of FemCare. Tell us about FemCare. Let's start with that.
So FemCare is a registered nonprofit organization that started in Hamilton, Ontario. We're on a mission to rewrite the narrative around menstruation through advocacy, education, and community health promotion. So our vision is a world where all who menstruate experience optimal health and wellness.
And it's interesting because when we, and I don't want to sound naive or wrong or rude here at all by any means, but what are the sort of the stigmas that go on with menstruation?
Well, there's so many stigmas, and it's rooted in a long, extensive history of, violence and oppression against women, and just a general neglect towards women's health. And unfortunately, this is a problem in Canada just as much as it's a problem in other countries around the world. And there's a lot of stigma around menstruation still because it's still considered filthy. And there are still a lot of misconceptions around what menstruation is and, whether or not menstruation is healthy. There's so many misconceptions around it, so much confusion, and so that's what my organization is trying to address. It's to debunk these myths by educating society.
I think that's a wonderful
about
thing.
Menstruation and.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just saying.
Okay.
It's interesting because I might not have thought about it as much as I did only in the last 7 or 8 weeks, because we brought a little girl into the world. So now my head is already thinking in the future, as a father of a little girl, what are these conversations one day I'm going to have with her? My mind has already done that, because I do that with most things in life. I sort of think about where they'll be in the future. And maybe at the end of the day, too, do men sort of take this stuff for granted?
I don't think it's that men take it for granted. I think it's that they don't understand it. And a lot of that has to do with the silence around this issue. And there's a lot of silence around it because of the stigma and because of the taboo. And so men don't really feel like they have a place in this conversation. And so what my organization has done is we've opened up that discourse so that men can also be involved. We've done it with our menstrual drives, which we're no longer hosting because we're working on a government level and we're trying to change policy. But when we were doing menstrual drives, we also added an education component to it, where we would have conversations, community-based conversations around menstruation. And a lot of men would attend. They would contribute to the conversations, or sometimes they wouldn't say anything at all. They were just there to listen and to learn. And so I don't think that men take it for granted. I just think that they weren't given the education, and that falls back on society, right? And our failure to educate and to have these conversations earlier on.
Halima Al-Hatimy is with us, the president and founder of FemCare, and we'll also get to Owen in just a moment. Owen McCall and Frank Dumas still on the line. Tell me about FemCare and the connection with cannabis.
So we recently lobbied the municipal government in the city of Hamilton to fund menstrual products for low-income and homeless people who menstruate, and that motion was passed back in May. So we managed to successfully get period poverty on the political agenda, and so our next goal is to get menstrual pain management on the political agenda, specifically looking at conditions like endometriosis. Currently, there's no cure for endometriosis, and the treatments that are available, like medical interventions, medications like they give hormone pills like Visan, or medications that are actually anti-cancer agents like Lupron, but there aren't any treatments that are specific to endometriosis. And there are currently a lot of studies that are showing that the endocannabinoid system may actually be involved in the mechanisms of endometrial pain, suggesting that if we are to create a treatment for endometriosis, that we should be targeting the endocannabinoid system. There are also studies that are showing that, and what that means, targeting the endocannabinoid system is using, treatments like cannabis, external sources of cannabinoids to help treat endometrial pain. And there are also studies that are showing that women are actually self-medicating with cannabis. And this is a huge risk. And I think this is where the government, the policies around cannabis and the laws around cannabis are actually putting women at great risk right now. And the fact that we have neglected this area of research, it's also putting women at risk because they're accessing this medication. And this is not in Canada anymore because it's legal in Canada, but I'm talking in places like the United States, for example, where in some states it's still considered illegal. A lot of these women have to access it, by risky means, and they might not be taking it properly. They don't know how that cannabis was grown. They don't know what was put in their cannabis. So there's just so many potential dangers here. And so I'm trying to raise awareness about the need for us to seriously consider the therapeutic potential of medical cannabis to treat menstrual related conditions. And that's what my speaking engagement was about here in Malta at the Medical Cannabis Summit.
Oh, really a great initiative, and really interesting to hear about. Frank mentioned that one of the things that was intriguing on your sort of a plate here of future endeavors is perhaps mushrooms and psychedelics and psilocybin, I would imagine. Does that have to do as well with helping the menstrual cycle, or is that for other reasons?
It's for other reasons. I do a lot of other work around home and community care, specifically community mental health, as well as looking at post-traumatic stress disorder and treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I've been having discussions with attorney Paul S. Lewin. He's a high-profile attorney who's currently looking at launching a lawsuit, actually a landmark case to legalize psilocybin mushrooms for end-of-life care and for cancer care, specifically to support, mental distress around that time. Some of the science is showing that psychedelics can actually help with palliative care and end-of-life distress. And so, we're doing research around that and trying to advocate for the government to also look at considering legalizing psychedelic mushroom, at least to do research at this point, the clinical trials, because these policies are also preventing us from being able to do effective research to determine if this treatment would be effective.
Well, Frank was right. We should definitely talk. I have a personal venture away from the radio program that is involved in the space. And you mentioned about depression and post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety, and through all the research that I've done in terms of the reset button and getting connected again to the world, to the environment, to yourself, I think that we're going to see a big wave, and everything you just mentioned of people wanting this drug to be decriminalized and eventually legalized as well, and of course controlled dosages and education and stuff like that. While you can't make pure medical claims yet, this is the next big wave coming, in my opinion, as well. Halima, I'm just trying to figure out how I get everything going here, because we've got so many people, but I do want to make sure you and I personally stay in touch. And when you're back from Malta, I hope to have you on the program, and then maybe go for a coffee after to talk about potential synergies. That's amazing.
Certainly.
Stay on with us. I just want to jump on in here to Owen McCall. Owen was at the Malta conference, now flew home back to Switzerland, as Frank Dumas alluded to earlier. How are you doing, Owen?
Hey, thanks for having me. Doing great. I'm actually in Munich now, but I'll be back in Zurich tomorrow in Switzerland. But yeah, it was a great conference. I had the pleasure of meeting up with Frank again for the second time. And it's a lot of fun. These conferences are great. But as he alluded to, a lot of changes happening in the space. So happy to talk a little bit more about that.
Oh, good to hear. And by the way, Frank, when we do these Frank Friends segments, we don't need all your friends at once. We got lots of time to do them, okay?
It's just the ones that are not partying right now. That's why.
Yeah, exactly. After 12 in Malta on the end of a conference, I can only imagine. So, Owen, tell us about what's going on in the AI space. And Frank, again, mentioned how, this, and there was a lot of, I don't want to say shady, but there was a lot of kind of people thinking they were going to change their worlds with their initial coin offerings. And I do think their hearts were at the bottom of it, were there in the best interest of any investor. But then we saw a lot of the coins and the altcoins especially go down. It was a very tough time for the industry, but there's way more than just currencies and cryptocurrencies and altcoins in blockchain. So what is it that you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I work for a company in Switzerland called Heroes Group, and we sort of come engage with the blockchain space in two main ways. On one hand, we do a lot of blockchain development ourselves, so setting up projects. An interesting one we're doing now actually in Paraguay. It's a reforestation project called Tree Coin. And what we're doing there is it's sustainable forestry, and then we have a dual coin offering, a security token, and a cryptocurrency that we're going to be launching there locally to help stimulate the local economies there. And then the second way that we come to the space is on the media and marketing side of things, and that's where I met Frank last time, and I learned a bit about his past and some of the crazy marketing stunts that him and his partners have pulled before. I'm not sure if he's enlightened you at all about some of these. What was it? You named a monkey or something, Frank, didn't you? Golden Palace monkey or something like that. Anyways, I think that's a funny thing that we can bring back up. Mark Billings, who's the CFO of Zeu, and has been a business partner with me for probably close to 2 decades now, was with goldenpalace.com before, and came up with the name for a monkey that scientists had discovered in the Amazon, and they were looking for $200,000 back then to buy the forest where this very rare and special monkeys lived, and they were endangered. There was promoters that wanted to cut down the forest, and
and they provide the money to the scientists, and in exchange they got the right to name the monkey. So if you can look it up, even the Latin name is the Golden Palace monkey. So that's one of the things. So we were just talking about these different things that Mark and I have been involved with over the last over our old mature career. Like people tend to forget that we on average are about 20 years older than most of these people in this field. So there's some mystery behind it.
Well, I like Frank's way of thinking. Definitely always fun. Frank's mind's fun, isn't it, Owen?
Oh man, absolutely. I mean, I knew as soon as I hung out with him for a couple hours, we had a couple of beers together, and once we got to talking and heard some of these stories, I know I was in for a fun ride. But to your point about the changes, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's not just currency that this technology is going to enable. I think we see a ton of new applications, a lot happening. I mean, you guys were speaking earlier in the med tech front, very exciting stuff. Of course, the cannabis arena, and as you mentioned now too with the psilocybin. And I just read recently too, I think John Hopkins, they've now got a dedicated hallucinogenic center. I think they just secured something 18 million in funding for the next 5 years. And so I really hope that we'll see some big changes, I think, in that arena. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, very exciting stuff. And tell me about your heroes, heroesgroup.ch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so like I said, we really focus on two main applications within the blockchain scenario here, or we come at it with two different ways. So one side is like I said, developing the tokens ourselves. We have in-house blockchain engineers and a team there handling all of that kind of stuff. And we're focusing on a couple of interesting avenues. One is tokenizing commodities, and so actually looking at a number of Canadian companies, especially mining companies, with some precious metals, semi-precious metals, and tokenizing those and opening up, of course, the markets there to the global communities. Another thing we're looking at is, well, like I said, sort of social impact products. Social impact projects are very exciting for us. I did mention the Paraguayan project there, and then also another one is company shares. We're looking at doing that in Switzerland now. And so those are sort of the three main angles that we're taking currently on the blockchain development side of things. And then I've had the good grace to be able to participate on the media side of things as well. So I've been able to attend a lot of conferences. We've built up a social media platform social media channel there on YouTube and all the rest of the stuff called Decentralize, and had the opportunity to interview and speak with a lot of the big movers and shakers in the place. So it's been really exciting.
Very good, Owen. Owen McCall, everybody, and we definitely want to keep in touch with you. And I'm going to sort of follow up with Frank's friends, Halima Al-Hatimy, president of FemCare and founder of FemCare. And then Frank, just because I got you, and I've never heard you be this quiet for this long. I'm not going to lie. Tell us what you learned in Malta at the conference, and sort of what's next with your ventures and everything that you're up to.
Well, there's a few things. There's a few things that are picking up now. I think the business is getting a little bit more mature. People are starting to figure it out. Also, the business model. This should be articulated. We call it the third industrial revolution. But for the last 2-3 years, my main problem I have with most people involved was that we were bringing guys that could have been actor in Mad Men, that who were operating under 1950s management techniques or management principles with a business that's actually has to define how it will operate in the future. So that's we still don't know where this thing is going. We're starting to see it, and it's starting to get a lot clearer. And I think a lot of the smoke has cleared out now. And we had Halima and I had an interesting roundtable with Akon earlier today, and Akon is quarterbacking a lot of initiative in Africa, and you could see that a lot of things start without really knowing where it was going, how it would be deployed, and now, probably through a lot of errors and through a lot of failures, we're starting to see where this thing is going, where this business is going to really change the world, and it will. It will empower people. It will give back the power from generation from multinational back to the citizen, and back to the community. So, you've heard that a lot from people, and in the last, probably, I'm old enough to have heard it for a full generation, for 25 years, of people saying that there was no community anymore, that people were all individualists, and that we had lost that capacity to cooperate with each other. And I think that the blockchain, with the culture that comes with it right now, is going to allow us to reinitiate or reset this and go back to the old village. Might be like a virtual village. It might be with a lot of people from a community that are geographically distributed and are connected based on interest and on needs. But we're building back the old community village where everybody was collaborating and where you would be able to get a fair share of what you create in terms of value.
Well, Frank, listen, we love these updates. As you know, we love your friends, your vast array of friends, all with very, very unique approaches in terms of their. You have a big brain, and you circulate yourself around other people with big brains too, and I love that. I love the experience, and I love the knowledge that we get from you. And thank you to Owen. We appreciate it. Thank you to Halima, and please stay in touch, everyone.
For sure.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank you, Todd. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Enjoy Malta. Don't party too hard, okay, guys?
We'll try.
Okay, yeah. I can only imagine.
Okay,
okay,
man. I don't know if we can make that promise, but
yeah.
I have a flight tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. Okay, so.
Yeah. Good luck. Okay. Good luck.
Thank
but
you.
Definitely, let's stay in touch, please.
This is the Todd Shapiro Show on Canada Talks, SiriusXM 167.